Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Hansen, Festival Director for VAFF, and welcome this afternoon. And thank you very much for joining us on our virtual celebration of our Asian Heritage Month on this session of Lunch and Learn. We begin by acknowledging that the land we are broadcasting at is the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, as well as the Mississauga of the Credit, Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee and Wendat peoples. Our 10th annual Industry Insight, we will be addressing the theme of celebrate representation, opportunity, and evolution, and through the hybrid model of in-person session and virtual creators discussion. This is the last of our series to wrap up the Asian Heritage Month. This program is generously sponsored by Canada Media Fund, CMF. Our sponsors include Canadian Media Producers Association, CMPA, and Director Guild of Canada, BC. Community sponsors include Explore Asia, Vancouver Asian Heritage Month Society, and Cultural Brew Arts. This afternoon session is virtual lunch and learn, as I said, with Canada Media Fund. And I would like to introduce our presenters for CMF. Today we have two individuals here. We have Christina Chu, a business analyst at Telefilm Canada on the Canada Med Funds Program Administration CMFPA team. As a member of the CMFPA, she helps administer a number of funds, including the pilot programs for racialized communities, English regional production bonus and performance envelope programs. Prior to Telefilm Canada, she worked for funding agencies Creative BC and has over 10 years experience in business affairs working for independent production companies. And with us, we also have Evelyn Zhang, who is also a business analyst of the but she's from Canada Media Fund Program Administration, CMFPA, also from Media Fund Program, team at Telefilm Canada. Evelyn is a phase two analyst reviewing and analyzing projects in the closing phase of undercurrent CMF programs. Evelyn has over 10 years of experience in the film and television industry, working for independent producers across Canada. So at this moment, we have Evelyn with us. Welcome, Evelyn. We're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Susan.
And we also have Christine. Thank you. We just had a little bit of we were concerned that she couldn't join us, but here she is. I'm so excited that you're here with us as well. And so, yes, let's get this lunch and learn session started. I'm not sure if it's Christine or Evelyn who's going first, but I'll let you two take over the stage, so to speak.
For sure. Thank you so much. I will be co-presenting today's presentation with my colleague, Christine, and I will start. Give me a second. I will share my screen with everyone. And while we are going through the information, I will just stop my camera so I can focus better. Okay, hi everyone. Happy Monday. Today we're going to talk about some of the basic 101 information about Canada Media Fund and some of our programs. Before we start, I would like to give everybody a little bit background information. First of all, the relations between Canada Media Fund and Telefilm Canada. So Canada Media Fund is the organization that determines the budget and the programs and their guidelines, where Telefilm Canada, Christine and I worked at, we are the administrator of the programs. That's why when you're applying for CMF funding, you would be applying via our Telefilm Canada system called Dialogue. And Telefilm Canada has 4 offices across the country in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and Halifax. We also have a coordination team, besides the business analyst team, focusing on helping the new and existing clients navigate to the Dialogue system and answer any questions regarding the application process. They're very helpful. And here we are looking at this slide. It basically gives information about the funding source. The Canada Media Fund receives financial contributions from the Government of Canada and Canada's cable, satellite, and IPTV distributors. So what does this mean? It basically sets the fundamental eligibility requirement. Let's say you just, got a really great project and you attach Netflix or Hulu as your broadcaster or streaming services. Unfortunately, because they did not contribute to the Canada Media Fund, they will not be able to trigger a CMF application. And moving on, so each year we'll have a budget, like annual budget to work with. So this year for the 2022 to 2023 fiscal year, we have about $365 million budget to work with. And the budget is allocated through different programs and divided into different markets. So usually the English market will take 2/3 of the budget and the French market takes 1/3. And each market, we have two main streams. One is experimental stream and the other is convergent stream. So this year we have, like I said earlier, we have about $365 million to work with, allocated through the convergent and experimental stream. So convergent stream is to support the development and production of Canadian audiovisual content for broadcast or digital distribution. This is your traditional TV series, TV movie, and your web series distributed online on, let's say, CBC Jam. And the experimental stream is to support innovative and leading-edge interactive digital media projects. So under the experimental stream, the funding would be investing in innovative Canadian digital content. That includes interactive content, let's say 360 website, your VR, your AR, and games and apps and some software. And here, the goal is to encourage the development of leading edge interactive DM content and software applications. And it also supports innovation in content, technology, or business model. I don't know about our today's audience if any of you have experience in the experimental side, but if you are interested in knowing more about the experimental stream, feel free to check out the CMF website for the guidelines. There is one program under the experimental stream that may interest our TV and film producer, is the digital linear series program. Basically, it funds any subsequent seasons of your web series. Let's say you've launched successfully your first season of a web series and now you are producing the second or the third season, then you could check out this program and then you may be eligible to apply for some of the digital linear series funding. And then next is the convergent stream, which also covers the majority programs that we're working with every day. The convergent stream provides funding in high quality Canadian convergent content. It covers 4 eligible genre: drama, which is your scripted content, variety and performing arts, and your documentary and children's and youth. Here under drama, it could be a rom-com, it could be a thriller. Under the documentary, it could be a documentary series, it could be a feature documentary, and children's and youth. It could be live action, could be animation, could be a combination of both. So this year, for this fiscal year, we have about $320 million budget to work with. Basically, the reason to support these 4 genres is because the CMF's mandate is to provide funding to support the underrepresented genres, which includes documentary programs. So convergent, what does convergent mean? It basically means that you must have an eligible TV component and also accompanying multi-platform content that meets the criteria. In order to be eligible for convergent programs, you basically need to check these 3 major categories. The first one is your project. Project must meet the 3 essential requirements. The first essential requirement is the TV component needs to be certified by Cavical and achieve the 10 out of 10 points. I think I think our audience is probably very familiar with the chemical point system. Basically, you have your key creatives, your director, writer, editor, music composer, highest paid performers, DOP, production designer. You make sure that your your key creative team is 10 out of 10. That means you have the Canadian talents here. And the second one is the underlying rights are owned and significantly and meaningfully developed by Canadians. That means the producer or the applicant must own the IP, and you meaningfully participated in the development of this IP. Let's say if you have an American producer and who wants to just to take advantage of some funding in the Canadian market, and they hire a local producer who did not participate in the development process, who could not make any creative or production decision during production, then this will not be eligible. And the third essential requirement is the TV components is shot and set primarily in Canada, which is basically is about your story is in Canada, about Canada, and is relevant to Canadian audience everyday life. But certain exceptions can be made if your project is documentary and the storytelling requires you to film in other parts in the world, then this could be accepted on a case-by-case basis. And the second major category is the this also echoes my second slide. Basically, the project must have the support of a CRTC licensed Canadian broadcaster. This is CBC, this is Bell, AMI, or the support of a CRTC licensed VOD service like Rogers and Shaw. And or the support of a Canadian digital distribution services like CBC Gem or APTN Lumi. I believe that's the name of the APTN's online distribution platform. And the last one is also the most important one. The project must be convergent. In order to meet the convergent criteria, you need to meet two. The first convergent criteria is your TV component must be available either on a CRTC licensed Canadian broadcaster or on a digital distribution services owned or controlled or operated by a Canadian broadcaster, or it is made available on a CRTC licensed video on demand service. Once your project is eligible for the first convergent criteria, you also need to meet the second convergent criteria. That means you need to have a digital media component. That could be a website or a social media campaign, or you could have a app, or you can have a web series going with your TV project. Or it could be after meeting the first convergent criteria, it also could be made available online or on VOD or on another CRTC licensed Canadian broadcaster. So there must be some genres that are really that falls. You thought it could fall under the eligible genres, but it may not. So here are some examples. Let's say you just developed a really interesting travelogue show that also hosts a little bit talking component, and you're not sure if that is eligible for documentary or not. I would suggest that you could apply for a eligibility consultation session via Dialogue. It basically is a pre-development consultation where a business analyst will review your creative materials and also your eligibility and tell you you're wrong. Either it is an eligible runner or not, or this company or this project is eligible for the CMF funding or not. Please keep it in mind, it's not a creative review. The business analyst will not give you notes on how to improve your script, but they could definitely tell whether you're eligible or not. And then I will pass it to my colleague, Christine.
All right, thanks, Evelyn. So I'm going to do a deeper dive into our convergent programs. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, perfect. So development programs is the first type that we're going to talk about. Under development programs, there's three specific types of development programs. There's the selective programs, there's first come, first serve, and then there's our development envelope programs. So selective programs just basically means that you should apply by the deadline date, and all the applications will be scored according to an evaluation grid. And we have specific funding set aside for each one of these programs. So if your score is not high enough, then it won't be funded. That is very different from our first come, first serve programs, which is that any projects that apply that meet the eligibility criteria will be able to receive funding. The difference between these two programs is that if you're selected for funding for the first come, first serve, you're eligible, then you will get a prorated ask most likely, because keep in mind that these programs are really oversubscribed. So just keep that in mind. And the nature of the CMF contribution for the development programs is a repayable development advance. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about this specific first come, first serve program for pre-development. All right, so the deadline is coming up on June 7th. Keep in mind that all eligible applicants are for-profit Canadian companies. Eligible applicants can only apply with a maximum of one project. And really great for BC producers is that at least 40% of the program is reserved for regional projects. And regional is defined as 150 kilometers outside of Toronto. So any producers with applicant companies outside of this area would be considered regional. Also keep in mind that 25% of the pre-development budget is reserved for diversity community projects, and this is a defined term in the guidelines. Eligible costs are to support early stage creative materials. So if you're coming in for like an episode two script, or if you want to do a rewrite of your script, it's not really the program for you. This is more for like treatments, or if you want to write a pilot script, that is possible as well. So note that eligible projects must be new projects that have not received any previous CMF financing, and returning series are not eligible for this program. Also note that at application, in order to be eligible, you must have an agreement with a writer for the project, and most importantly, a letter of interest from an eligible Canadian broadcaster or participating provincial funding agency. So each province has a funding agency, but not all of them have participated, including Creative BC and Ontario Creates. Also note that triggering entities, including broadcasters and provincial funding agency, are only limited to signing 2 letters of interest. The maximum you can ask for is 84% of your project's eligible costs, or $46,000, whichever is less. Now, as I said earlier, this is a first come, first serve program. So just because your ask may be $46,000 or 84% of your project's eligible costs, that might not be the funding that you receive. So any costs incurred prior to April 1st will not be eligible. And the opening date is coming soon, is June 7th. We always tell people to just apply on the opening date, because you never know when it will be oversubscribed. For this specific program, generally it has been oversubscribed on the first day. So you should apply on June 7th. I'm going to talk a little bit more about our production programs. So just like development, there's 3 different types. There's selective, first come, first serve, and our envelope programs. So examples of selective programs would be like the Indigenous program, which the deadline has passed, but the pilot program for racialized communities is coming up. It's on June 9th. And then examples of first come, first serve are like a northern incentive for applicants based in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. It opened and closed, I think, in April, but there is a second intake in July 28th if you're interested in this program. English Regional Production Bonus, same thing. It opened on May 10th, but it closed pretty much on the same day, and it will reopen again in September. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the pilot program for racialized communities. there are two. There is a production part of this stream, and then there's a pre-development and development part. So the production part is a selective process. The deadline is on June 9th. If you go into the guidelines, you'll see a evaluation criteria or chart where or scoring grid which specifies how a project will be scored. What you need as well to keep in mind is a minimum of 15% confirmed Canadian third-party financing at application, a license fee, so a broadcast license fee threshold requirement of 10%, and the contribution that you can ask for is the lesser of 60% or $750,000 for drama and animation, or $550,000 for documentary, variety and performing arts, and children and youth programming. One question that we often get asked is if you have a children's animation, which one would you be applying, or which threshold or which contribution maximum will you be eligible for? And that would be the $750,000 one. Keep in mind that to be considered for this program, you should have 51% of the ownership and control of the applicant company, and copyright in the eligible project must be owned and controlled by a producer that is a member of a racialized community. And racialized community is a defined term. It is in the guidelines. So if you have a question of whether you are a member of a racialized community, you can refer to our guidelines on whether you are a member. In addition, new this year is that the producer and either the screenwriter or director of the project must be a member of a racialized community. Feature films must also meet the 10% license fee threshold at application. Feature films for some of the other programs have a 5% license fee threshold. So this year, feature films must also meet this 10% threshold for this program. So that's our production part of the stream. But for the pre-development and development programs, which opens on September 13th, is a first-come, first-served program. So again, you should treat this opening date as a deadline date. And basically, any project that is eligible, then it will receive funding. So that's why you should always reply on the opening date. So pre-development, same thing as our normal general pre-development program. It requires a letter of interest signed by a Canadian broadcaster. The difference here is that there is no maximum number of letters of interest that the broadcasters can sign. The maximum you can ask for is 75% of your eligible costs, or $25,000. For development, you have to have a broadcaster agreement with the broadcaster, but you don't need to have, there's no minimum amount of a development fee, which is different from our general development program. And the maximum you can ask for development is the lesser of 75% or $200,000. And note that new this year, you can only make one application for pre-development and one application for development for this program. One other program I wanted to highlight was the Diverse Languages program. The application deadline is September 15th. It is a selective process. Just like some of our other programs, it must be convergent, and it's the intention of this program is to fund projects in languages other than English, French, or Indigenous Canadian languages. The maximum contribution you can ask for is 49% of the project's eligible costs, or $200,000, and license fee threshold is 10% of the eligible project's eligible costs. So keep in mind that new this year is that any one Canadian broadcaster can only fund a maximum of 10 projects through the stream. And I'll mention this a little bit later on, but 2 points allocated in the evaluation grid is given for these extra positions that are to be held by members of a diverse community. So because this is a selective program, there is a scoring grid, and there will be points allotted if you can meet this criteria. Okay, so just a little bit about our performance envelope programs and how they're calculated. The Canada Media Fund calculates the envelope for each broadcaster at the beginning of the fiscal year. The broadcaster during the year allocates funding from the envelope to producer's project. And then the producer, you apply to us for Telefilm, basically, under Telefilm's dialogue application for funding. And then we commit the funding eligible, and then next year, this starts all over again. So for the development envelope program, this is also available on the CMF website. If you look under their envelopes for broadcasters, this is how much each broadcaster has been assigned. And then also this is how much each broadcaster has been assigned for production. So one note I wanted to add here is alternative access. So what is alternative access? These are broadcasters basically that don't have an envelope. They might not be mentioned here, and yet you received funding from them. So you can still come to us for funding. There's a special fund that we set aside for alternative access that you can apply to us for. And this is as per CMF's equity and inclusion strategy. As part of the conversion and experimental selective programs, 2 points have been allocated in the evaluation grid for certain positions that are to be held by individuals that publicly identify as women, and also 2 points allocated in the evaluation grid for certain positions that are to be held by members of a diverse community. And then in our pre-development early stage development programs and experimental conceptualization programs, 25% of these funds are to be reserved for applicants where at least 40% of the cumulative paid producer, screenwriter, and director positions are held by members of a diverse community. So in each one of these points here, it says to be confirmed by persona ID numbers. And though the persona IDs is basically a number that you can apply for through the CMF website. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Evelyn and I, and our emails are here. As well, our coordination team email we have included as well, because if you have any pre-application consultations, they are the ones that can set that up for you, basically. So yeah, that is the end of our presentation. Oh, sorry, Susan, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just listening to you and I just assumed you would hear me. Thanks so very much for pointing that out. I was just saying thank you so very much again, Christine and Evelyn, for joining us this afternoon on this Lunch and Learn session. That was a lot of information, and it's always, funding is always an issue for filmmakers, and the fact that there is this opportunity, that's amazing and wonderful. So again, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And for those of you that have signed up for the 3-in-1 session with the CMF analysts, we will see you there. If you would like to get in touch with the CMF analysts, in addition to the information that Christine had provided for you on the screen, you could also email us at info@vaff.org. I think if there is no other further questions at this moment, there was a lot of information there provided. That would be a wrap for us. Thank you so very much. And what a great way to start the week with all this information and opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Bye.